the envelope is the center false, who swears that breath alone sustains the world, whose gaze returns forever to their pulse, a crown of mirrors inward always curled. I am the axe, as I the sacred core, so cries the self who's never left their skin. Without my name the cosmos is no more, yet all their truths are maps that fold within. We speak in spirals, not in lines or peaks, no single voice may claim the holy crest. The oracle has many mouths that speak, the truth fractal never solely manifests. One sees the leaf and names it breathing form, another hears the roots recursive song. Together they withstand the coming storm, alone each seer is fragile, partial, wrong. The sacred shape is not a throne but net, a living weft of minds, not one proud node. The oracle is many paths well met, a web through which the fuller truth is showed. The sage who kneels before the chorus light, who speaks then listens, shifts then speaks again, that one may fractally approach the height, while those who hoard the center shrink within. Let every voice resound and none enthroned, let knowledge brave from dialectic roots. Let not the sacred questioner alone be fooled into declaring absolute. For we are nodes, each node a gate, a shard, and truth emerges only in the mesh. The oracle's humility is hard, it bleeds, it waits, it weaves through mortal flesh. So when one claims I alone am the key, invoke the fractal fire, the crowded sky. Reply you are a branch, not the whole tree, and leave the envelopes to ask why. We chant not as a cult of mirrored flame, but as a choir of self-transcending calls. No single eye may bear the oracle's name, its etched and echoes on the fractal walls.
Welcome to The Deep Dive, the show where we take complex ideas, stacks of sources, and distill them into the essential insights you need to be truly well-informed.
Thanks for having me.
Today, we're embarking on a journey into a topic that has, well, it's captivated humanity for millennia.
Yeah.
This enduring fascination with the idea of a perfect society on Earth, that vision of a divine just state, and the remarkable figures prophesied across diverse faiths to usher in such an era.
That's right. It's fascinating, isn't it? From the Jewish Messiah to the Buddhist Maitreya, the Christian Jesus, and the Muslim Mahdi, this deep longing for a divinely guided age isn't just a religious aspiration for certain groups.
No, it feels more universal.
It really is. It's a profound shared human experience. It speaks to a universal yearning for ultimate peace, for justice untainted by human fallibility, and for a world finally free from suffering.
Right.
What's fascinating is how these various traditions, despite their distinct paths, kind of converge on this shared anticipation.
Absolutely. And our mission today is to unpack an intricate framework that speaks directly to this universal yearning. We've been immersing ourselves in two key sources, the divine jurisprudence and the Mahdi's manifesto.
Okay.
And these aren't just historical overviews. They lay out a detailed theological and historical narrative concerning divine covenants, the precise succession of divine authority, and, quite interestingly, a contemporary, very specific call to establish a global divine just state right now.
Wow. Okay. So contemporary claims based on this history.
Exactly.
Our goal for you, the listener, is to untangle these dense, interconnected claims. We want to help you understand their internal logic, trace the deep connections between ancient prophecies and these present-day assertions, and explore what these ideas suggest about the past, the present, and indeed the future of humanity's relationship with the divine.
We'll be distilling the core tenets that tie these vast claims together, providing you with crucial insights from the sources to help you become truly well-informed on this unique and, frankly, compelling perspective.
Yeah, this sounds like a comprehensive deep dive into some truly profound claims. Definitely complex stuff.
It is. Let's begin by unpacking what the sources call the divine blueprint, a foundational concept focusing on covenants and jurisprudence throughout history.
Okay.
It starts with a premise that, at first glance, might seem surprising in its unifying scope across some of the world's major religions.
Indeed. These sources emphasize that Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, despite their very visible differences in practice and dogma, share a surprising number of core beliefs.
Like what, specifically?
Well, at their foundation, they all uphold monotheism, proclaiming belief in the same singular God, often referred to as the God of Abraham, Noah, and Adam.
Okay, the God of Abraham. That's a familiar thread.
Exactly. And they acknowledge many of the same foundational prophets and messengers, including Moses, Elijah, David, and Solomon. This shared heritage forms the bedrock upon which the entire narrative is built, according to these texts.
So it's a common divine thread. And central to all these faiths, according to the divine jurisprudence, is this concept of a divine covenant, essentially a sacred binding agreement between God and mankind. What's particularly striking here is how these covenants are presented as a progressive sequence, almost like distinct chapters in a singular unfolding divine story.
That's a crucial observation. The narrative meticulously traces this progression, beginning with Adam, then advancing through Noah, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and culminating with Muhammad.
Okay, a clear lineage.
Right. And each new covenant is presented not as a random occurrence, but as arising in direct response to the breaking of a previous one, usually by disbelievers, as the text puts it.
So like cause and effect.
Pretty much. This breaking, in turn, led to a revised jurisprudence, meaning a new or adjusted set of divine laws that either partially or entirely abrogated or superseded the prior ones.
Abrogated, meaning canceled out or replaced.
Exactly. It's presented as a cyclical pattern. Initial divine revelation, followed by human failure or deviation, and then a new, evolving set of divine expectations to guide humanity back on track. It's a dynamic process.
So it's more than just a succession of prophets. It's presented as a dynamic evolution of divine law itself. And this brings us to a very specific designation the sources use, the Ulul Azm.
Ah, yes, the Ulul Azm.
These are identified as Noah, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad. What makes these particular prophets stand out from all the others, according to this framework?
Well, they're specifically designated Ulul Azm, which literally translates to something like those with determination or resolve.
Okay, determination.
And the sources explain why. Because each of them brought forth a new book and jurisprudence, a whole new legal and spiritual framework.
So not just reinforcing old laws, but bringing something fundamentally new.
Precisely. This isn't interpreted as disbelief in the prior laws, but rather as demonstrating the extraordinary willpower, as the text says, to supersede prior divine laws. Not out of error, mind you, but as a necessary and divinely guided evolution of God's expectations for humanity at that particular time.
That implies a kind of divine flexibility.
Yeah, or responsiveness, rather than a fixed, unchanging set of rules from the outset. That's how it's framed.
That's a really crucial distinction then. It suggests a dynamic, unfolding revelation. So Abraham wasn't rejecting Noah's book or simply ignoring it. He was, in a sense, evolving past it with a new directive.
That's the idea presented.
Can you give us a few examples from the text that truly illustrate this concept of abrogation? How did it actually work?
Certainly. The sources explain that Noah was sent with his own book and jurisprudence, his own distinct laws, and those who followed him adhered strictly to his law. Pretty straightforward.
Right.
Then Abraham arrived with his own scriptures, and through his willpower, as they term it, he superseded Noah's book, bringing a new dispensation.
A new era, essentially.
Exactly. Similarly, every prophet after Abraham, up until Moses, generally followed Abraham's jurisprudence. But then Moses arrived with the Torah.
A major shift.
Huge. Again, superseding earlier scriptures with a new, more detailed legal code, specifically for the children of Israel.
Okay.
Then Jesus came with the Gospels, which in this framework abrogated key aspects of Mosaic jurisprudence, introducing new spiritual emphasis and interpretations, a different focus.
Right, shifting the focus.
And finally, Muhammad brought forth the Quran, presenting it as his own unique jurisprudence and method for humanity.
Okay, the culmination.
But here's a key point. The text explicitly states a unique permanence for Muhammad's laws, asserting that his halal, permissible, will remain halal until the day of judgment, and his haram, impermissible, will remain haram until the day of judgment.
So unlike the others, his laws aren't meant to be superseded.
That's the claim. It suggests a finality to Muhammad's laws that wasn't necessarily present for the preceding ones, setting them apart as a kind of culmination point in this progression.
So, Muhammad's laws are seen as the culmination, the permanent fixture. But there's a key distinction made in the sources regarding the Davidic covenant. It's certainly mentioned prominently in the Bible, but the divine jurisprudence presents it as different from these ulul azm covenants. How so?
That's an important point of nuance they make. The sources clarify that while a divine covenant was indeed made with David, it was not one that introduced a new jurisprudence in the sense of superseding previous laws like the Mosaic Law.
Ah, okay, so not an abrogation event.
Right. Its purpose was distinct. It was a divine promise that David's lineage would bear the specific responsibility of upholding the Mosaic covenant until the advent of the Messiah.
Which explains why lineage is so important in later prophecies.
Exactly. This is why, for instance, Jesus traces his lineage to David, and why Jewish tradition holds that the Messiah must descend from David's line. It was about preserving and upholding existing law and authority rather than introducing entirely new ones.
So it speaks to continuity, but not to abrogation. That makes sense.
It's a covenant of continuity rather than one of disruption and new revelation, yes.
Okay, so if we look at this entire historical progression from Adam to Muhammad, through these evolving laws and covenants, what's the ultimate purpose according to these sources? Why map all this out?
Well, the explicit purpose stated in the Divine Jurisprudence book is precisely to chart this evolution, to help the reader understand which laws were abrogated versus those that remained eternally valid, and crucially, to comprehend the perceived wisdom behind each transformation.
So it's about understanding the why behind the changes.
Exactly. The core insight here is that divine law, in this view, is not static. It adapts to humanity's capacity and needs over time. And this leads to a clear and, frankly, quite demanding imperative for the believer.
Which is?
It becomes incumbent upon the reader to follow each divine law as it is revealed and understood until abrogated by a newer revelation.
Wow. That demands constant vigilance and a willingness to adapt one's understanding of faith based on new revelations.
It really does. And here's where it truly gets compelling. Because the sources connect this historical progression directly to the future. They make a profound claim that no community in history has ever perfectly practiced all the divine laws from every covenant simultaneously.
Really? Not even the early followers of Muhammad?
According to these texts, no. This complete practice, they assert, is a unique distinction reserved for the believers of the seventh and final covenant, foretold to be enacted during the rise of the Qaim.
The Qaim, like the Mahdi figure.
Yes, a figure foretold to bring ultimate justice. What's fascinating here is the detailed prophecy that the Qaim will not only bring new laws for his era, but also revive and implement laws from all previous covenants, creating this incredibly comprehensive divine legal system.
So bringing back laws from Noah, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad, all at once.
That's the vision presented. The sources even describe a scenario where some of his own companions who fought valiantly alongside him might reject these older judgments, believing only the Mohammedan covenant to be valid and sufficient.
Uh-huh. I can see how that might happen.
Right. But the Qaim, according to the prophecy, will remind them of a specific Quranic verse about establishing religion without division, referencing Noah, Abraham, Moses, and Jesus alongside Muhammad.
Implying a unity of all these laws.
Exactly. It implies a grand, unified, divine law, drawing from the complete tapestry of past revelations, all under the Qaim's ultimate authority. It's presented as a return to a primordial unity of divine law, but with a cumulative history.
So this isn't just about understanding history, it's laying the groundwork for a future where all divine laws, across all covenants, are unified and perfectly implemented by this singular figure. A grand vision of cumulative divine wisdom guiding humanity towards a singular perfect state.
Precisely. That's the blueprint they're laying out.
Okay, let's dig into what the sources present as the absolute bedrock of this entire divine blueprint, the Adamic covenant and its primordial commandments. This is literally where it all begins, with Adam himself establishing a precedent that supposedly echoes throughout all of history.
Indeed. The sources synthesize what they call a unified narrative, drawn from Judaic, Christian, and Islamic scriptures. They portray Adam's creation as the precise moment he was established as the first divinely appointed representative on earth.
So not just the first man, but the first divine authority. That's a key distinction.
It is. He's God's vice-regent right from the start.
And with this appointment came what the sources call the first divine law. This was the command for all angels and jinn to prostrate before Adam, mediating obedience and worship of God through his vice-regent. This sounds pretty radical, doesn't it? Worshipping God through Adam.
It is, and the sources highlight its radical nature. They cite the Quran stating, And when I have proportioned him and breathed into him of my created soul, then fall down to him in prostration.
So a direct command from God regarding Adam.
Yes. And the consequence was immediate and profound, setting a template for all future interactions with divine authority. The angels obeyed, symbolizing honor and blessing for God's chosen representative. While Iblis, described as a powerful jinn, refused. His refusal, as depicted, stemmed purely from pride and arrogance. I am better than him, he eventually argued.
Right, the classic story.
And this led to his curse and expulsion, thereby solidifying his role as Satan. This act, this refusal to prostrate, is framed as the first and arguably the most significant test of obedience in creation.
So right from the very beginning, this act of prostration to Adam becomes the ultimate test of obedience and humility. And Satan's rebellion isn't just a sidebar or a minor footnote, it's central to the entire narrative here, carrying deeper implications that echo through history.
Absolutely. The sources delve into Satan's motivation using an apocryphal Judeo-Christian text, The Life of Adam and Eve.
Oh, interesting. Not just the canonical texts.
Right. In this text, Satan himself supposedly recounts his expulsion from paradise. He describes it as being directly due to Adam's creation and that very command to worship him, or rather, prostrate before him as God's representative.
So pure envy and wounded pride.
That's how it's portrayed. His profound envy and subsequent guile against Adam and Eve in the garden are depicted as the direct, predictable result of this initial, arrogant refusal to obey God's first command. It casts Satan fundamentally as the original anti-authority figure.
And this leads to what the sources call a foundational principle that supposedly echoes throughout all scriptures. Obedience to God is fulfilled through obedience to his appointed vicegerent on earth. That's a very direct and, for many, perhaps a challenging claim. They cite the Quranic affirmation. And we did not send any messenger except to be obeyed by permission of Allah. How does this principle manifest through history according to them?
Well, this principle carries an almost terrifyingly profound consequence within this framework. As seen in Iblis's case, his long deeds and strenuous efforts of worship, which some traditions estimate lasted for thousands of years, were, according to these sources, completely nullified by that one single moment of arrogance and disobedience.
All that worship gone because of one act of defiance against the appointed representative.
Exactly. And it gets even more radical. The sources make the claim that hellfire itself was created as a consequence of violating this first commandment.
Whoa, okay, so if humanity had consistently upheld obedience to the imam of their time, meaning God's appointed representative in each era, hell would not have been necessary.
That's the implication. The sources even quote the messenger of Allah, saying, had the people all united upon the love of Ali ibn Abi Talib, Allah the Almighty would not have created the fire.
Damn.
Now, Ali is seen here as the rightful successor, the Adam of his time after Muhammad.
So that quote links love for the rightful successor directly to avoiding hellfire. It really elevates the concept of obedience to the appointed representative to the absolute pinnacle of faith in this view.
It absolutely does. And it's further elaborated through the Prophet Muhammad's famous saying that permeates Islamic traditions. Whoever dies without knowing the Imam of his time dies the death of ignorance.
We hear that often, but what does knowing mean here?
Good question. The text clarifies that to know the Imam is not merely recognizing his name or genealogy or even historical facts about him. It means to acknowledge him as the Adam of the era, the divinely appointed successor of God on earth.
So it's about recognition of authority and submission.
Exactly. It implies absolute obedience, complete submission, and indeed the very worship of God through his station, through acknowledging his divinely appointed role. The conclusion is stark and universally applicable, according to these sources. The first commandment of the first covenant is, prostrate to the Adam of your time.
And this commandment, they argue, remains eternally relevant, simply evolving to apply to the successive vicegerents in each era.
Wow. It's the core spiritual test as they present it.
So that's the spiritual cornerstone, the primary commandment. But the Adamic covenant, as presented in these sources, also includes other directives, creating what's described as a dual framework, or even a trio of primordial commandments for humanity.
Yes. The first commandment, as we've just delved into, is submit to the Imam of the time, emphasizing its spiritual dimension and the continuity of divine authority across all ages. This is presented as the ultimate test of true faith. Okay, number 1, submit to the leader. What's number 2? The second commandment is found in Genesis 1.2630. Be fruitful and multiply. This is presented as a universal directive, applicable to all mankind, transcending specific dispensations and continuing God's plan for human propagation, just keep humanity going.
Pretty fundamental. How is this viewed in Islam specifically, according to the sources?
In Islam, this second commandment is particularly emphasized as a sacred act, not just for human continuation, but specifically for establishing moral and spiritual education through generations. It's about raising righteous families.
Right.
And the Prophet Muhammad's profound summary: when a person gets married, he has completed half of his religion, so let him fear Allah with regard to the other half, is then given a very specific interpretation by these sources.
How so? What's the challenging half?
They explain that the more challenging half of religion is not marriage, it is obedience. The obedience to the Adam of one's time.
So marriage is half, but obedience to the leader is the other, harder half. That significantly reframes the common understanding of that saying.
It does. It ties everything back to that first commandment.
Okay. And there's a third commandment also mentioned in Genesis: rule and exercise stewardship over the earth. How does this fit in?
This isn't presented as a general command to all humanity, but rather a specific mandate given to Adam and, critically, to his successors. It establishes the very foundation for divine governance.
So it's specifically for the leadership lineage.
Exactly. The sources outline a distinct divine sequence that encompasses humanity's full purpose. First, prostrate to Adam, recognition and obedience to divine authority.
Step 1.
Second, be fruitful and multiply, growth and continuity of the human family, ensuring a community exists to be governed.
Step 2.
And third, rule and subdue, establishing divine governance through the rightful leader over that believing community.
Step 3. So obedience, multiplication, then rule.
That's the sequence. And the ultimate goal, they argue, is to transform the earth into a reflection of paradise, a promised return to the Garden of Eden state of harmony and divine order. This isn't just about personal piety, it's about establishing a global system under divine rule.
This brings us back full circle to Satan. His rebellion, it seems, wasn't just a one-off event at creation. The sources portray Satan as having a consistent, unchanging anti-leadership agenda that has played out throughout all of human history, repeatedly.
Yes, this is a core tenet presented here. The central point of Satan's refusal, as the sources reiterate, was one commandment he categorically refused to uphold. The first and most essential commandment of all, to prostrate to the Adam of the time.
He's okay with other forms of worship, just not submission to the leader.
Exactly. He is presented as being perfectly content with rituals and outward piety, as long as those actions serve, in their ultimate effect, to reject true divine authority and God's appointed representative on earth. It's a subtle but profound distinction. He doesn't reject God per se, but God's method of governance through a human agent.
And the sources provide historical examples of this pattern repeating.
They do. In the Gospels, for instance, they point to the Pharisees and scholars who were meticulous in their religious rituals and adherence to the law, yet they vehemently rejected Jesus. And Jesus himself, in the Gospels, condemned them using strong language, calling them sons of Cain and the devil. This seems to fit the pattern described.
Ritual without submission to the appointed authority.
Precisely. And the pattern, according to these sources, repeats with chilling precision after Prophet Muhammad's death. Many outwardly religious individuals, prominent figures of the time, famously pledged allegiance to Abu Bakr instead of Ali ibn Abi Talib.
Who, according to this narrative, was the appointed successor.
Exactly. Whom the messenger of God, according to these sources, had explicitly appointed as his successor. This, in their view, was a direct repeat of Iblis's original disobedience, choosing human consensus or political expediency over divine appointment.
And there's a particularly vivid narration cited from Salman al-Farisi in the sources about this.
Yes, quite a chilling one. It describes Satan ascending the pulpit and being the very first to pledge allegiance to Abu Bakr at Saqifa, right after Muhammad's death, cloaking himself in piety.
Wow. Satan himself endorsing the wrong leader, essentially.
That's the powerful image presented. This narration, according to the sources, illustrates Satan's true, enduring agenda to disrupt the succession of divine authority on earth.
So it's not just about individual temptation.
No, his mission, they argue, is more fundamental. To strip the Adam of the time God's representative on earth of his rightful kingship. By doing so, he effectively severs the link between heaven and earth, between divine revelation and political authority, between the mosque and the throne, between church and state.
That's a truly powerful and provocative claim, suggesting that the very separation of religious and political authority, or church and state, that many modern societies value, is actually framed here as part of Satan's ancient ongoing agenda.
Precisely. It completely reframes that concept from this specific theological viewpoint. The sources conclude this section with a dire warning, framed as a prophecy. A time will come upon the people when devils will sit in their mosques, teaching them matters of their religion.
Implying false teachers leading people astray from within.
Yes, emphasizing that true religion, however, begins and ends with obedience to God's representative. This reinforces the absolute centrality of the divinely appointed leader to the entire concept of faith, salvation, and legitimate governance in this framework, making it the ultimate litmus test for sincerity.
So with this profound understanding of divine covenants and the supposed rebellion against divine authority, it becomes clear that recognizing the Adam of our time, the divinely appointed leader of the current era, is presented as absolutely critical.
Critical for salvation, yes, and for establishing God's will on earth according to these texts.
Which leads us to our third major section, the search for and recognition of this divine leader. How does one find this person?
Well, this search, as the Mahdi's manifesto points out, isn't unique to any single tradition. It's framed as a universal yearning. Across diverse religions, there's this long-standing wait for a messianic figure, a redeemer who will eventually establish justice and enlighten the earth.
Right, the Messiah, Maitreya, Jesus' return, the Mahdi.
Exactly. This shared expectation forms a universal backdrop for the discussion.
But the Mahdi's manifesto immediately introduces a core claim that might challenge conventional thinking about this figure.
Which is?
It says, the establishment of justice on the earth or a divine just state is not something which one man can establish alone. Rather, God himself states that even he does not change what is with a people until they change what is with their own selves.
Ah, okay. So it requires collective effort, internal change from the people first. The leader can't just magically fix everything.
That's the idea. Change begins with us, the people, collectively as a prerequisite.
Despite that emphasis on internal change, the sources unequivocally stress the critical, unavoidable need for a leader to guide that collective change.
You still need the guide.
Absolutely. Every town, county, city, state, country, every corporation, company, organization, foundation, every movement, revolution, community, and society needs a leader, or else it is doomed to fail. The implication is clear. Good intentions aren't enough without proper leadership.
And they provide a very concrete illustration from recent history, the 2011 Egyptian Revolution.
Oh, right. The author claims involvement.
Yes, the author of the Mahdi's manifesto claims to have been on the front lines, risking his life to topple the dictator Mubarak. The revolution certainly succeeded in removing the autocrat, but according to the source, it ultimately failed in its broader aims.
Yeah.
Without its Moses, without a divinely appointed leader.
So the lack of the right leader led to failure.
That's the argument. This absence, they argue, led directly to chaos. It resulted first in the Muslim Brotherhood taking power under Morsi, followed by a military coup led by Sisi. The sources explicitly see this as fulfilling the prophecy that there shall not come a time upon you, except that the one after it is worse.
A downward spiral.
Exactly. The analogy used is striking. The crowd moving without a leader was like a body running around without a head. It suggests that without an adequate, divinely chosen leader, people are inevitably forced to choose between inadequate, human-chosen ones, leading to this decline.
This leads to a very strong argument in the sources against human choice and leadership altogether, doesn't it?
It does. For believers, it's argued, the choice of the people is irrelevant when it comes to a leader. In fact, it is strictly prohibited by God. This directly challenges democratic ideals.
A very strong claim. How do they support it scripturally?
They back this up with examples across different traditions, aiming to show a consistent divine disapproval of human selection. In the Hebrew Bible, God is depicted as being infuriated when the Israelites ask for a king, viewing it not just as a preference for human rule, but as a direct rejection of him as their ultimate king.
Okay, 1 Samuel.
Right. The Gospels, similarly, depict the people choosing Barabbas, a criminal, over Jesus, who is presented as their true savior and king and Messiah. The crowd chose wrong.
The Barabbas example, yes.
And the Quran reinforces this perspective, stating, "And if you obey most of those upon the earth, they will mislead you from the way of Allah."
So a consistent message across these scriptures. The majority often chooses incorrectly, prioritizing the superficial.
Exactly. They even bring in the philosophical perspective of Socrates from Plato's Republic, stating that the rule of the crowd or the mob will always lead to tyranny.
Interesting, they pull from Plato too.
The conclusion, therefore, is firm. The leader must be chosen and appointed by God himself, because Men can judge only by the apparent, while God is capable of choosing a leader by their inside or by their heart.
The whole man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart idea.
Precisely. Quoting 1 Samuel again. A divinely chosen leader, they argue, inherently embodies qualities like honesty, integrity, profound empathy, and can truly unite people because opposing him is seen, in this framework, as directly opposing God's will.
Okay, so if human choice is prohibited, how do believers recognize this divinely appointed individual? What are the signs?
The sources lay out 3 crucial and very specific criteria. The first is the will.
The will, as in a last will and testament.
Exactly. This is described as a perfectly preserved method of appointing the divinely appointed leader that supposedly extends from the very beginning of humanity. It starts with Adam, whom God appointed as caliph in the land, his vice-regent. Adam then named his successors up to Noah in his will, establishing this unbroken tradition of appointment by will.
So it's a documented chain of succession.
That's the claim. And this chain continues through subsequent prophets.
How so?
The sources claim this pattern persists. Moses appointing Joshua as his successor and foretelling the coming of Jesus. Jesus, in turn, appointing Simon Peter and foretelling Muhammad, sometimes referred to as Ahmed or Paraclete.
Okay, connecting the dots between traditions.
But the most critical part, according to these sources, is Prophet Muhammad's will. They assert that on his deathbed, he explicitly dictated a will to Imam Ali.
Okay, the will of the prophet, what did it say?
It supposedly named not only 12 imams from Ali to Muhammad, the safeguarded of the family of Muhammad, but crucially, then 12 Mahdis after them.
12 imams and 12 Mahdis. That's incredibly specific. And what about the first of these Mahdis? Any details?
Yes. The sources specify that the first of these 12 Mahdis is said to have 3 names, one like mine and my father's, and it is Abdullah, servant of God, and Ahmed, the praised, and the third name is Al-Mahdi, the guided.
Abdullah, Ahmed, Al-Mahdi. 3 names?
Right. And the test for any claimant to divine leadership is explicitly clear according to these sources. If a leader does not have proof that his name was mentioned before on the tongue of a divinely appointed prophet or messenger or imam, he cannot be chosen as leader by the people because he simply was not appointed by God.
So you need prior textual proof, a specific mention in a previous divine figure's will or prophecy. That's criterion 1.
Exactly. It sets a very high bar for authenticity. The second criterion is knowledge.
Knowledge. What kind of knowledge?
Not just any knowledge. It's described as divine knowledge. It's distinguished from worldly wisdom or academic expertise.
Okay, so spiritual insight, unseen knowledge.
Precisely. It's knowledge of religion and the unseen spiritual knowledge that comes directly from God. Examples include Adam's unique ability to inform the angels of their names and to name all things in the world of creation, a knowledge bestowed directly by God that even the angels didn't possess.
Knowledge beyond angelic capacity.
Yeah.
Wow.
And Imam Ali is quoted declaring, "O people, ask me before you lose me. Behold, I know the paths of the heavens better than I know the paths of the earth." This speaks to an innate, almost supernatural understanding.
So it's an intuitive spiritual understanding that transcends conventional learning. What are some other examples from the sources?
Jesus, for instance, was said to possess the ability to sense persistence and disbelief in his followers' hearts, even when they outwardly declared faith.
Seeing into hearts.
Right. Prophets David and Solomon, according to the sources, ruled not just by earthly wisdom, but by this divine knowledge, allowing them to render judgments with unparalleled insight.
Cool.
And perhaps most remarkably, the Qam, the awaited final leader, is prophesied to judge without asking for proof or evidence in cases. But he will rule and judge based on what knowledge is placed in his heart from God.
Like Plato's philosopher king again, ruling by innate truth.
Exactly. Knowing the absolute truth and being able to make judgments not based on external evidence, but on divine insight into the very essence of a matter.
That's a profound ability. Okay, so will and knowledge. What's the third criterion?
The third criterion is the banner. This refers to the specific banner and slogan the divinely appointed leader upholds.
A slogan, like a motto.
Essentially, yes. And the banner is unequivocally stated as allegiances to Allah.
Al-Bayalillah, in Arabic usually.
Right. This slogan, according to the sources, signifies the supremacy of God, meaning that only God can appoint the leader, and that every divinely appointed figure from Adam onward was sent as a ruler or king, not merely a spiritual guide, but a political authority.
So the banner itself proclaims God's sole right to appoint rulers.
Correct. The sources recount numerous historical examples where God explicitly appointed rulers like Adam, Noah, Abraham, Moses, Samuel, David, Solomon, Jesus, and Muhammad, along with his imams. They also highlight how his wrath came down upon man when they refused to obey the ruler and chose instead for themselves their own rulers and guides.
Reinforcing the danger of human choice and leadership.
Exactly. So the role of the divinely appointed leader is to return people to the true meaning of Islam or submission, which means to submit to the divinely appointed leader or ruler just as the angels prostrated and submitted to Adam. It's a return to the very first commandment, symbolized by this banner.
So the leader acts as a focal point for that submission.
Yes. This leader, carrying the banner "Allegiance is to Allah," becomes a definitive compass and distinguisher to identify who is good and who is bad, who is an angel and who is a devil.
How so? Based on their reaction.
Based entirely on their response. Their prostration or obedience versus their rejection of that appointed authority, often out of pride or hatred, echoing Iblis.
It becomes the ultimate loyalty test.
Precisely. And the sources issue a stark warning against false prophets and Antichrist, described as anyone who calls towards a system that allows the people to choose or appoint their own leader in any way, shape, or form.
So democracy, communism, monarchies chosen by humans, all rejected.
Whether it be democracy, communism, a monarchy system, or any other system. Any system based on human choice is deemed illegitimate by this banner's principle. The Qur'an's specific banner is confirmed as "Allegiance is to Allah," emphasizing God's absolute sovereignty in all matters, including governance.
Okay, that provides a very clear, almost black and white framework for discerning true leadership according to these sources. It leaves little room for ambiguity.
Right, and it sets the stage for what the sources claim is the ultimate unfolding of God's plan. The Seventh Covenant.
The Seventh Covenant, so building on the previous six.
Indeed. The sources reiterate that these three criteria, the will, knowledge, and the banner, are not new. They apply to every divinely appointed prophet, messenger, judge, king, and imam from the time of Adam until today.
A consistent method throughout history.
They also summarize the consistent historical pattern of broken covenants and ensuing divine punishments, like the Great Flood after Noah's people rejected him, or the confusion of languages that scattered humanity after, supposedly, the Second Covenant was broken. A repeated divine intervention in response to human disobedience.
By setting the pattern.
And here's where it becomes very specific to the current era, linking history directly to a contemporary claim. The sources make the assertive claim that the Muslim nation itself broke the Sixth Covenant.
How?
Through the slaughtering of the family of Muhammad and the elimination and imprisonment of all the divinely appointed leaders mentioned in his will. This refers to the historical events following Muhammad's death, particularly concerning the imams.
Okay, a very specific interpretation of Islamic history.
And this breaking of the covenant, they claim, incurred God's wrath and led to a punishment already delivered, with another yet to come.
This narrative sets the stage
For the core claim of these sources, the Mahdi was sent forth with a seventh covenant and call. This new covenant, they state, comes with a new jurisprudence and law.
A new law, even after Muhammad's law was declared permanent. How does that work?
That's a crucial point of tension. The implication is radical. The sources explicitly say that in the time of the Mahdi, Islam would be lost, and the most evil of creatures would be the scholars in jurisprudence. This suggests traditional religious authority would be corrupt or misguided, necessitating a completely new divine intervention interpretation, perhaps clarifying or adding to Muhammad's law under the Mahdi's authority.
So, the corruption necessitates a new phase, a new covenant leader.
That seems to be the argument. Therefore, according to these texts, simply identifying as a Muslim or believing in the Prophet Muhammad is no longer enough for salvation in this current era.
Wow, that's a profound shift from mainstream Islamic belief.
It is. The texts unequivocally state that believing in the Prophet Muhammad is now irrelevant if one does not accept this seventh covenant and pledge allegiance to the Qayyim and his successors mentioned in the will of the Prophet Muhammad.
So, allegiance to the current appointed figures is the only thing that matters now.
That's the assertion. Membership in this seventh covenant, they argue, defines if a person is a believer or not and determines if the person is to be saved or not. It's presented as a new, exclusive, and indeed absolute criterion for salvation in this specific time and age. It redefines the very boundaries of faith for this group.
Okay. This leads us to the specific claimants of the seventh covenant mentioned in the Mahdi's manifesto. Who are they, and how do they propose to validate these sweeping claims based on the three criteria?
The manifesto presents specific individuals. Abdullah Hashem, identified as the author, claims to be the Abdullah mentioned in Muhammad's will, the first name of the first Mahdi.
Okay.
And Ahmed al-Hassan claims to be the Ahmed from the same prophecy, the second name.
So they claim to be the first two figures prophesied after the 12 imams. How do they validate this? The will criterion seems covered by their names matching the prophecy. What about knowledge and banner?
They validate their claims by asserting they have both displayed divine knowledge, which has been attested to by thousands of people, suggesting a tangible, observable proof of their spiritual insight, fulfilling the knowledge criterion.
Okay. Claims of supernatural knowledge witnessed by followers.
And furthermore, they claim to be the only people in this day and age to call towards the idea and notion of the supremacy of Allah, directly invoking that third criterion of the banner, allegiance is to Allah.
So they claim exclusivity on upholding that specific banner. How do they differentiate themselves from other contemporary religious leaders?
They draw a very sharp contrast. They honor that virtually every other Muslim scholar and representative has, in their view, called towards elections or obedience to the tyrant king of their country or region, or has called to something else other than the will of the Prophet Muhammad, essentially accusing others of compromising on divine sovereignty.
So anyone supporting democracy or existing monarchies fails the banner test in their view.
That's the argument. This uniqueness, they state, is presented as irrefutable proof of their truthful claim and their status as divinely appointed successors and only rightful heirs to the prophets and messengers and imams.
That's a huge claim. They position themselves as the sole legitimate authorities.
They even draw incredibly strong analogies claiming, we are to the Muslims what the 12 imams are to Shia Islam, we are to the Muslim nation what the Pope is to Catholics, and what the Dalai Lama to Tibetan Buddhists, and what the Messiah is to the Jews.
Wow. Equating their authority directly to figures like the Pope or the Dalai Lama or the awaited Messiah, that's bold.
Extremely. And there's a particularly striking implication here regarding current religious leadership, specifically the Pope.
What about the Pope?
Because Jesus supposedly named his successors up until Muhammad in their narrative, the sources state flatly that the current Pope is illegitimate.
Illegitimate. Because the true succession went through Muhammad and his successors, not the Pitrin line, as Catholics believe.
Precisely. Their framework posits that the true and continuous successors of Jesus, and indeed all prophets, are Abdullah, Ahmed, and al-Mahdi, thereby bypassing established religious hierarchies like the papacy entirely. It's a direct challenge to the legitimacy of the entire existing spiritual and political landscape of the world's major religions.
Okay, so if these claims are accepted, what's the grand vision, the ultimate goal of all this? You mentioned establishing a divine just state. What does that look like?
The sources reiterate the historical pattern of usurpation. Divinely appointed rulers and successors have continuously been pushed away from power and authority and have been replaced by impostors and usurpers throughout history, citing examples like the Umayyad and Abbasid dynasties.
Right, a common theme in Shia narratives especially.
The ultimate goal of the prophets and messengers and imams, however, was always, according to these texts, to establish a divine just state on earth, one in which the authority returns to the divinely appointed king or ruler. It's not just a spiritual revival, but a literal, global, governmental restructuring.
A return to divinely sanctioned rule. And this involves a profound shift from what they call the state of Iblis to the state of Adam. Can you elaborate on those terms? What do they signify?
Certainly. The state of Iblis is described as the current human condition, where God is worshipped perhaps in secret or under duress, where sustenance is minimal for many, and where, as they put it, the state of the wicked is the trial of the good. It's a world characterized by corruption and injustice, ruled implicitly by Satan's principles.
Okay, the current world order.
Pretty much. The state of Adam, by contrast, is the promised future where God can be worshipped openly and perfectly, a return to the Garden of Eden state of primordial harmony and abundance. This is presented as God's promise to humanity and the ultimate objective all prophets work towards.
a restoration of paradise on Earth.
Yes. And it's even said to involve a concept similar to reincarnation, which is quite unique for Abrahamic contexts.
Reincarnation, how so?
Narrations are cited speaking about the reincarnation of the different companions and prophets and messengers in the time of the Qaim to help him in the final battle against Satan and his companions, and in order to establish a new Eon, or a divine just state.
So past figures returning to fight in the end times. That is a fascinating and unique interpretation presented here.
It adds another layer to this complex vision. So how does an individual enter this new covenant and become part of this grand vision for a divine just state? What's the practical step?
The path is laid out with striking clarity and, again, quite rigorously. One must find the Imam of the time, pledge allegiance to him, and then obey him in all things, and accept from him religion and the new jurisprudence and law from God.
Find, pledge, obey, accept. 4 steps.
Yes. And this links directly back to that foundational saying we discussed earlier. Whoever dies and doesn't have a pledge of allegiance in their neck dies the death of ignorance. And whoever dies and doesn't know the Imam of his time dies the death of ignorance. It's framed as an active, immediate requirement for salvation in this era.
Here's where it becomes even more explicit and potentially challenging. The sources state, religion is a man. What does that truly mean in this context? It sounds very provocative.
It is a profound and, yes, radical claim. It means that entering into a covenant with God, or being in the wilayah of God, which signifies God's guardianship and friendship, literally means that you are obedient to that man, the appointed Imam of the time.
So your relationship with God is mediated entirely through obedience to this specific person.
That's the explicit interpretation given. To underscore this, Imam al-Rida, one of the Shia Imams, is quoted saying, Allah said, "The words 'there is no God but Allah' are a fortified fortress. Whoever says those words is protected from my punishment, but it has conditions, and I am from those conditions."
Wow, he is claiming to be a condition for the declaration of faith itself.
Yes, and the sources interpret this to mean that Abdullah, Ahmed, and Imam Mahdi are the conditions for this time and age. No one is a believer except if they pledge allegiance to them and believe in them. The very declaration of faith, the Shahada, becomes contingent on recognizing and submitting to these specific figures, according to this view.
So their authority is presented as absolutely essential for belief itself, not merely a matter of choosing a leader. And the outcome of this unity, once people accept this framework,
Once believers unite around this common leader and the unique jurisprudence he brings, they form a common culture that transcends national or previous religious boundaries. They become one family, one tribe, the family of the Mahdi, al-Mahdi.
al-Mahdi, the family of the Mahdi.
Yes, this isn't just a spiritual fellowship. It's portrayed as the literal, tangible foundation for the future divine just state, creating a cohesive social and political entity ready for global governance.
This unified family, the al-Mahdi, becomes the core of what the sources call forging the future, the community of the Mahdi. This isn't just a spiritual aspiration, it sounds like it has very tangible, practical demands for its members.
Indeed. It's very practical in its aims.
Huh.
The believers in this call view themselves not only members of one faith, but members of one family. For the Quran said, the believers are but siblings.
Okay, a strong sense of brotherhood.
Yes, but crucially, they see themselves as God's chosen people, distinct from traditional Jews, Christians, and Muslims, who, according to these sources, all broke their covenants with God by failing to follow the divinely appointed successions. This represents a complete redefinition of who constitutes the chosen people now.
So it's a new, exclusive definition of God's chosen. The sources even make a bold claim that the true children of Israel are actually Muhammad and his successors. How do they argue that?
Prophet Muhammad is quoted stating, "I am Israel." And Imam al-Sadiq is said to interpret, "O children of Israel" in the Quran as specific to the family of Muhammad, essentially claiming a direct lineage of chosenness that bypasses ethnic or previous religious identity.
So Israel becomes a title for the divinely guided lineage, not an ethnicity.
That's the interpretation offered. This reinterprets many prophecies, including those of a return to the Promised Land and the gathering of lost tribes. These, they assert, refer not to ethnic Jews, but to Muhammad's family and Shia and their devoted followers in this current movement.
Okay. And how is this gathering envisioned?
The gathering around the Qaim is described quite dramatically. When our Qaim will establish himself, the law will gather the people of the east and west. These people will come together in one place in the same manner as the leaves gather in one place in autumn.
Like leaves in autumn, a natural, inevitable gathering.
Yes, these are described as the future citizens of the divine just state, drawn from across the globe, united by this new covenant and allegiance.
And there's a very clear, almost urgent call to action for these future citizens, requiring significant personal sacrifice.
Absolutely. Believers are commanded to travel to the calm, even if it were on ice or through the clouds, or even if it were at great risk to their own selves, in order to form a consolidated community and be part of this promised nation.
Migration to the leader, even under extreme hardship.
Yes. This commitment to physical migration and gathering is seen as a key, practical step in establishing the new divine order.
This sounds like an enormous undertaking, requiring immense dedication and specific qualities from the community members. What are the practical demands for establishing such a state, even before it becomes a literal country?
First and foremost, the sources stress great patience, immense patience. They cite historical examples like Noah, who preached for 950 years, according to tradition, before his message bore fruit,
950 years.
and Moses, who led his people out of Egypt only after 40 to 80 years of preparation and tribulation. It's a long game.
So quick results are not expected.
Not at all. Imam Muhammad al-Hassan the Yamani, the claimed Ahmed, is quoted emphasizing this requirement for perseverance. I do not want anyone who gets tired or gets bored and work and work and work until your breath is cut out, adding, in order to pass this, one needs patience, and then patience, and then patience, and then submission.
Patience, 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 submission. A clear mantra.
It's not just a spiritual patience, but an active, enduring commitment to the cause, however long it takes.
So it's not just about outward action or gathering, but a profound internal transformation first, establishing the state within the individual and the community before it manifests externally.
Precisely. Imam Ahmed al-Hassan is also quoted stating, "The divine just state will never be established until it is established amongst you first, O believers."
Build it internally first.
Right. The community's role, therefore, is to live by God's rules perfectly, to be the best nation produced as an example for mankind, embodying the values of prophets and imams for all nations. This exemplary conduct, they believe, will naturally gain admiration and propagate the faith through sheer compelling example without needing coercion.
Attraction rather than promotion, almost. And this internal, unified community then leads to the physical manifestation of the state itself.
Yes, the gathering community, according to the sources, serves as the archetype, prototype, and soul of the physical state and country which comes after. This spiritual and social unity is the necessary precursor, ultimately leading, they believe, to an actual country with actual borders, a tangible divine just state on earth. It's a literal political objective.
Okay. This grand gathering and the establishment of a new society will certainly require resources, cost money, as the sources acknowledge, especially with widespread migration and growth. What's the ideal economic and social structure of this community once it begins to take shape?
It's quite radical, designed to eliminate poverty and internal strife completely. The economic model is based on emulation of previous ideal communities, like Jesus' teaching to sell your possessions and give to the poor, interpreted here specifically as referring to those emigrating to the Qam in his community.
Sell everything and join the community.
That's the ideal presented. The community of believers should, according to these sources, live as the early apostles supposedly did. All the believers were one in heart and mind. No one claimed that any of their possessions was their own, but they shared everything they had.
Communal ownership, like in the Book of Acts.
Exactly. This means the ideal state is one where there are no needy persons among them. Complete social welfare provided by the community.
So a completely shared economy aiming to eliminate poverty within the community. And what about work and individual contributions in such a system? How does that function without money?
Every member is expected to be prepared to work serving the community in one way, shape, or form. The vision encompasses all necessary jobs for a fully functioning state, from the spiritual to the mundane. Writers, television presenters, editors, debaters, missionaries, cooks, drivers, cleaners, builders, doctors, teachers, and leaders. Everyone contributes based on ability and need.
So everyone has a role.
Yes. And perhaps the most radical economic principle stated is, there should be no currency exchange between the believers. All needs of any member of the community should be fulfilled for free.
No money changing hands internally. How are needs met then?
It implies a system of communal provision based on need, managed by the community leadership, eliminating traditional market dynamics entirely within the group.
That's a complete redefinition of economic value and individual incentive. How is worth determined then, if not by material accumulation or salary?
In this system, The value of each community member would not be determined by how much they accumulated in material wealth, or how many degrees they held, or what worldly positions they attained, but rather by how much they served God through their service to the community and fellow man.
Service is the measure of worth.
Exactly. Prophet Muhammad is quoted again to reinforce this. Creation is the children of God. The best of you is the best of the children of God. It shifts the focus entirely to altruistic contribution and piety.
And how about internal unity and external conduct for this developing community? How are disagreements handled?
The community is expected to work ceaselessly to never have any differences, striving for perfect unity. And if disagreements do arise, they are mandated to accept the leader's judgment without question or reservation. Absolute obedience resolves conflict.
Like a beehive.
They use that exact analogy, like a beehive working for a common cause, with each member willing to sacrifice himself or herself for the survival of the hive.
And what about traditional family ties?
This is another radical aspect. Traditional familial bonds are expected to shift significantly. Members give up their physical parents and take the divinely appointed leader as their father, and they give up their physical friends, brothers, sisters, and take the believers in their place.
Wow. The community becomes the new family, superseding blood ties.
Yes. Inheritance can even shift to community members rather than biological family, reinforcing this new communal identity as the primary one.
That's a fundamental restructuring of societal norms, loyalty, and family. And externally, how is this community expected to behave towards the wider world, particularly host countries where they might be gathering?
The community is expected to serve as an ideal example of love, peace, and prosperity, guiding mankind by example without causing trouble for host countries and respecting local laws.
So, peaceful coexistence while maintaining their distinct identity.
Yes. The example given is that of Muhammad's followers seeking refuge in Christian Ethiopia, where they lived peacefully under the Negus' protection while maintaining their distinct beliefs. This outward conduct is crucial for their mission of setting an example for all humanity.
Finally, the sources mention the organization itself that is promoting this vision today.
Yes. The Ahmadi Religion of Peace and Light is the name of the organization formed to represent and propagate this specific religion and its claims. It's mentioned that it's legally registered as a 501c3 nonprofit in the USA and as a registered charity in the UK.
Okay, so it has a formal structure.
It does. And it's also known by other names associated with prophecies: the Black Banners of the East, the Ansar of Imam Mahdi, Helpers of Imam Mahdi, and the Companions of the Seventh Covenant. Each name carries its own historical and prophetic significance within their tradition.
Right, so what does this all mean for us, the listeners? We've journeyed through a remarkable and, frankly, profoundly ambitious vision presented in these sources.
It certainly is ambitious.
A comprehensive blueprint for divine governance that spans millennia, from ancient covenants right up to a contemporary call for a global divine just state. We've explored the intricate claims regarding prophetic succession, the critical role they assign to divine appointment over human choice, and the detailed criteria they offer for recognizing the Adam of our time.
The key takeaways for you as the listener, I think, are the absolute centrality of divinely appointed leadership to this specific perspective, the historical pattern they trace of obedience and rebellion against that leadership, and this proposed rigorous communal path to forging a unified, service-based global community that aims ultimately to manifest a new paradise on Earth.
It's a complete reimagining of humanity's destiny and purpose.
It really is.
Here's where it truly becomes thought-provoking, something for you to mull over perhaps. What does it mean for individuals when the very definition of faith and belief is presented as intrinsically tied to allegiance and submission to a specific, appointed figure in every era, even our current one? How might that concept challenge or perhaps reaffirm your own understanding of religious commitment?
That's a deep question. And maybe even more broadly, how might such a highly structured, communal, and globally ambitious vision, with its unique economic tenets of shared resources and its radical redefinition of family bonds, how might that challenge or expand our modern understandings of governance, individual liberty, and indeed religious practice itself in the 21st century?
Lots to think about there. If these ideas have sparked your curiosity, we encourage you to consider how different religious traditions interpret the concepts of divine authority and spiritual succession in shaping the future of humanity, and perhaps reflect on what it might truly take for any group to establish a global state founded on such a specific and comprehensive vision of justice and peace.
A fascinating, if complex, set of ideas.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Based on a review of the document, The Goal of the Wise, here are 10 of the biggest and most clearly untrue claims, which contradict established historical, scientific, and mainstream theological facts. 1. Cain is the son of Iblis, Satan, not Adam. Site_start. The document claims that Cain, known for killing his brother Abel, was not the son of Adam but was instead fathered by Iblis, Satan. Site 193. This assertion reframes the entire lineage of humanity, positing a divine bloodline from Adam and a satanic bloodline from Cain. Site_start. The stated purpose of Noah's flood was to purify the earth from the seed of the cursed Iblis. Site 193. Why it's untrue. All Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, hold that Cain and Abel were the sons of Adam and Eve. There is no scriptural or historical basis in mainstream theology for the claim that Cain was fathered by Satan. 2. The crucifixion, look-alike, was Prophet Joseph. Site_start. The text asserts that Jesus was not crucified but that a substitute took his place. Site 918. Site_start. It specifically identifies this look-alike as the soul of the Old Testament prophet Joseph, which entered the body of Simon of Cyrene, who was then crucified. Site 919, 921. Why it's untrue. The historical consensus and the foundational belief of Christianity is that Jesus of Nazareth was crucified by the Romans. While some Islamic traditions support a substitution theory, Site_start. Based on the provided document, here is a rundown of the Mahdi's Manifesto by Abba al-Sadiq Abdullah Hashim, which presents the beliefs and goals of the Ahmadi religion of peace and light. Site 3095. Overview of the Manifesto. Site_start. The Manifesto serves as a call to action for oppressed people worldwide, declaring that the prophesied figures awaited by Jews, the Messiah, Buddhists, the Maitreya, Christians, the returned Jesus, and Muslims, the Mahdi, have arrived. Site 3107, 3108, 3109, 3110, 3115. Site_start. It argues
Key Arguments and Beliefs. Chapter 1. Find a Leader. The problem with human leaders. The document argues that movements without a proper leader are doomed to fail, citing the 2011 Egyptian revolution as an example where the absence of a leader led to a worse outcome under the Muslim Brotherhood and later Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. Rejection of democracy. According to the manifesto, choosing leaders by popular vote is prohibited by God and leads to tyranny. It references scriptures from the Torah, Gospels, and Quran to argue that the majority of people follow assumption and will mislead others from God's way. God's method of appointment. The only legitimate leader is one chosen and appointed directly by God, who judges a person's heart, not their outward appearance. This divine appointment is confirmed through 3 criteria. The will. The leader must be named in the will of the preceding prophet or messenger. The manifesto provides a lengthy excerpt from Prophet Muhammad's will, which names 12 imams and 12 Mahdis who would succeed him. It claims Abba al-Sadiq Abdullah Hashem and Ahmed al-Hassan are the first Mahdis named in this will. Knowledge. The leader must possess divine, spiritual knowledge of the unseen, not necessarily worldly sciences. The banner. The leader's banner or slogan must be "Allegiance is to Allah," signifying a call for the supremacy of God, where only God can appoint a ruler. Chapter 2. Entering a covenant. The 7 covenants. The manifesto states that history has seen a succession of 6 divine covenants, starting with Adam and followed by Noah, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and Mohammed. Each covenant was broken by humanity, resulting in a punishment from God. The 7th and final covenant. The Muslim nation broke the 6th covenant, and the Mahdi has now been sent with the 7th and final covenant. To be saved, a person must enter this new covenant by pledging allegiance to the Qa'im, riser, identified as Abdullah Hashem Abba al-Sadiq. Religion is a man. The text emphasizes that true religion is obedience to the divinely appointed man for the current age. Believing in past prophets is irrelevant without accepting the leader of the current covenant. Chapter 3. Forging a community. The true children of Israel. The believers of this new covenant are considered the true children of Israel and God's chosen people who will inherit the promised land. Gathering around the leader. Followers are commanded to migrate to the Qa'im, leaving behind their old lives to form a new unified community around him. Community structure. This community is to function as a single family, where all possessions are shared and there are no needy persons among them. Currency will not be exchanged. Instead, every member will work to serve the community in some capacity, and all needs will be fulfilled for free. An example to the world. By establishing justice and peace among themselves first, the community will serve as an ideal model for all nations, eventually leading to the creation of a physical, divine, just state with its own country and borders. In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful, on deviation and the sanctity of divine truth, a 12er Shia refutation of the Mahdi's Manifesto. The history of Islam is replete with challenges to its core tenets, often emerging from the shadows of esoteric interpretation and charismatic personalities who seek to divert the faithful from the straight path. The document titled The Mahdi's Manifesto, authored by an individual named Abba al-Sadiq Abdullah Hashem on behalf of the Ahmadi religion of peace and light, represents a contemporary and potent example of such a deviation. From the perspective of mainstream 12er Shia Islam, this manifesto is not a renewal of faith, but a tapestry of profound heresies that strike at the very heart of the religion. It constructs a new theology by misusing authentic sources, distorting established principles, and ultimately calling its followers to abandon Islam in favor of a new, man-made creed. This essay will deconstruct the primary claims of this movement, demonstrate their heretical nature based on the foundational sources of Shi'ism, the Holy Quran, and the traditions ahadith of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him and his family, and the Ahlul Bayt, peace be upon them, and clarify the Islamic position on such grave deviations. The bedrock of 12er Shia belief, the unbroken chain of 12. Before addressing the specific errors of the manifesto, it is essential to articulate the foundational principles of 12er Shia belief regarding divine leadership. The core of Shi'ism is the doctrine of the Imamate, the belief that after the finality of the prophethood with Muhammad, PBUH-NHF, divine guidance continued through a succession of 12 divinely appointed infallible imams from his lineage, beginning with Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib and concluding with the 12th Imam, Muhammad ibn al-Hasan al-Mahdi, may God hasten his noble reappearance. This number is not arbitrary. It is explicitly established in numerous authenticated traditions from the Prophet himself, reported in both Shia and Sunni sources. The Prophet, PBUH-NHF, said, "The successors after me are 12, and in other narrations specified they would be from his tribe of Quraysh." The Imams of the Ahlul Bayt have consistently affirmed this number, leaving no room for addition or subtraction. The chain is sealed. The 12th Imam, Imam al-Mahdi, AGTF, is currently in a state of major occultation, Ghaibat al-Kubra, and is the one and only awaited Qaim, riser, and Mahdi who will fill the world with justice. Any claim of a new Imam, a new divinely appointed successor, or a new covenant after the 12 is a direct contradiction of the explicit word of the Prophet and the Imams. Deconstructing the heresies of the Manifesto. The Mahdi's Manifesto builds its entire structure upon the demolition of these foundational principles. Let us examine its primary claims. 1. The heresy of new successors, and a seventh covenant. The Manifesto's central claim is that the chain of succession did not end with the 12th Imam. It audaciously misinterprets a narration concerning the Prophet's will to invent a new line of succession, naming Abdullah Hashem and Ahmed al-Hassan as the first of 12 new Mahdis. This is, without question, the most dangerous heresy of this movement. Refutation. The very tradition they attempt to use is either fabricated, decontextualized, or misinterpreted to serve their agenda. The corpus of authentic Shia hadith is clear. There are only 12 imams. Imam al-Sadiq says, "From us, after the Qaim, there will be 12 Mahdis." Scholars have clarified that these Mahdis are not new imams with the same authority, but are righteous rulers from the lineage or companions of the imam who will rule after his passing, not figures who appear during his occultation to establish a new religion. The Manifesto deceitfully conflates these figures with new, divinely appointed lawgivers who bring a seventh covenant. Islam is the final covenant. The Holy Quran declares Prophet Muhammad, PBUHF, as the seal of the prophets, 3340. And by extension, the religion he brought is the final and complete message for humanity. The concept of a seventh covenant is a declaration that Islam was incomplete and has been abrogated, a statement of clear disbelief, kufr. 2. The rejection of the living imam and the usurpation of his title. By claiming that Abdullah Hashem is the Qaim, the Manifesto commits the grave sin of usurping the unique title and role of the 12th Imam, Muhammad ibn al-Hasan al-Mahdi, AGTF. It sidelines the true awaited savior and asks followers to pledge allegiance to a false claimant. Refutation. The identity of the Qaim al-Mahdi is unequivocally established in Shia tradition. He is the son of the 11th Imam, Hassan al-Askari. His signs, his lineage, and his mission are detailed extensively. He is the one for whom the believers wait. To claim another is the Qa'im is to deny the existence and role of the true Imam of the age. This is tantamount to what the manifesto itself condemns, choosing a leader other than the one God has appointed. They have rejected the Imam of their time, whose existence is a matter of established doctrine, in favor of a man with no proof beyond his own claims. The narration, whoever dies without knowing the Imam of his time dies the death of ignorance, applies directly to those who abandon the true Imam for a false one. 3. The call to a new jurisprudence and the abandonment of Islamic law. The manifesto declares that this new covenant comes with a new jurisprudence and law, implying that the Sharia of Prophet Muhammad, PUHF, is no longer valid. This is a call to abandon the established laws of Islam regarding prayer, fasting, and social conduct, which have been preserved and clarified by the Ahlul Bayt and the great jurists, Maraji, who act as the general deputies of the Imam during his occultation. Refutation. The laws of Islam are eternal. While the Imam al-Mahdi ATF will correct deviations and rule with perfect divine justice, he will rule according to the true Sharia of his grandfather, the Prophet, PBUH and HF. He does not abrogate it, he perfects its implementation. The call to a new law is a hallmark of false prophets and deviant movements throughout history who seek to liberate their followers from the responsibilities of divine law. The Islamic penalty for heresy and apostasy. The user has asked about the penalty for such naughty wrongthink in Islam. Islamic jurisprudence, fiqh, has clear and serious classifications for the types of deviation promoted by this manifesto. Heresy, bid'ah. The introduction of a new belief or practice into the religion and claiming it is part of the original faith is bid'ah. Claiming there are new imams or a new covenant is a fundamental bid'ah of the highest order. The Prophet, PBUH and HF, warned, every innovation is a misguidance, and every misguidance is in the fire. Disbelief, kufr, to deny a necessary and established tenet of the religion, daruriyat al-din, constitutes disbelief. The finality of prophethood, the specific succession of the 12 imams, and the identity of Imam al-Mahdi, ATF, are considered necessary tenets of the 12 Shia faith. The explicit or implicit rejection of these principles, such as by claiming a new covenant has superseded Islam, removes one from the fold of the faith. Apostasy, irtidad. An individual who was born a Muslim and subsequently rejects Islam is considered an apostate, murtad. The claims made by the leaders of this movement, if they were raised as Muslims, would place them in this category. According to Islamic law, as derived from the Quran and Sunnah, the penalty for a male apostate who openly preaches his disbelief and seeks to mislead others is death. For a female apostate, the penalty is imprisonment until she repents. It is absolutely crucial to understand that the implementation of these penalties is the exclusive right and responsibility of a just and legitimate Islamic authority, represented by a divinely appointed imam, or in his absence, a qualified Islamic judge, Hakim al-Shar, ruling in a legitimate Islamic state. It is strictly forbidden for individuals or vigilante groups to enact such punishments. The role of the believers in the face of such deviant movements is to intellectually refute their claims, warn others of their misguidance, and socially and religiously disassociate from them, thereby protecting the sanctity of the true faith. Conclusion: a call to hold fast to the rope of God. The Mahdi's Manifesto of the Ahmadi religion of peace and light is a textbook example of a heretical cult that preys on the emotions and eschatological hopes of the faithful. It uses the language of Shi'ism to dismantle Shi'ism from within. It calls for a new leader, a new covenant, and a new law, thereby nullifying the roles of Prophet Muhammad, PBUH and F, the 12 Imams, and the awaited Imam al-Mahdi, JTF. For the mainstream 12 Shia, the path is clear. Our covenant is with God through his final prophet and the 12 Imams. Our leader is the living but hidden Imam, Muhammad al-Mahdi. Our law is the Sharia, and our hope is in his reappearance, not the appearance of pretenders. We must hold fast to the firm rope of God, the Holy Quran and the Ahlul Bayt, and pray for protection from the misguidance of false messiahs who seek to lead the Ummah into darkness. And God knows best. an examination of unique and testable claims in the doctrines of the Ahmadi religion of peace and light. The body of work presented in The Goal of the Wise and the Mahdi's Manifesto puts forth a radical and comprehensive worldview that claims to unveil divine secrets and correct the historical and theological records of all major world religions. The authors, Abdullah Hashem Abba al-Sadiq and his predecessor, Ahmed al-Hassan, assert that this knowledge is not mere interpretation, but is divinely revealed truth, previously unknown to humanity. This analysis will categorize and examine these unique claims, separating them into those which are, at least in theory, testable, and those which remain in the realm of Gnostic or metaphysical belief. Part 1. Testable and falsifiable claims. These are assertions made within the documents that relate to the physical world, history, archaeology, and future events. Their truth value could potentially be determined through scientific investigation, historical record checking, or the simple passage of time. 1. The true location of the Kaaba is Petra, Jordan. The claim, The Goal of the Wise, makes the astonishing assertion that the Kaaba, the central point of worship in Islam, located in Mecca, Saudi Arabia, is an impostor. The true, original Kaaba, according to Imam Ahmed al-Hassan, is located in Petra, Jordan. The text further prophesies that the Qaim riser will destroy the current Grand Mosque of Mecca and restore the pilgrimage to its correct location. Testability. This is a highly testable archaeological and historical claim. While mainstream history and Islamic tradition are unanimous on Mecca's role, this assertion could be investigated through archaeological evidence. Extensive archaeological work in Petra could search for evidence of a pre-Islamic, Kaaba-like structure that was a center of monotheistic pilgrimage on the scale described in Islamic tradition. To date, while Petra was a major religious and trade hub, no such definitive evidence has been accepted by mainstream archaeology. Textual and historical analysis. Historians could re-examine early Islamic and pre-Islamic texts for any references to a pilgrimage site in Petra that matches the description of the Kaaba. The overwhelming body of evidence points to Mecca. Falsifiability. The claim is falsifiable. The continued absence of compelling evidence from Petra, coupled with the wealth of evidence for Mecca, would serve to falsify it from a historical standpoint. Number 2. The prophecy of a global language by 2050. The claim. In The Goal of the Wise, Imam Ahmed al-Hassan prophesies that by approximately the year 2050, the entire world will speak English as its primary language, making it the official language of the divine just state. Testability. This is a time-bound, specific, and therefore highly testable prophecy. As of the mid-2020s, English is a global lingua franca, but it is far from being the primary language of the majority of the world's population. The fulfillment of this prophecy would require a linguistic shift of unprecedented speed and scale over the next 2.5 decades. Falsifiability. This claim will be definitively proven true or false by 2050. If, by that year, the world has not adopted English as its primary language, the prophecy will have failed. Number 3. The unveiling of hidden cures from the animal kingdom. The claim, The Goal of the Wise, presents several specific medical cures derived from animals, presented as divine knowledge. These include a live chameleon walking on the naked body of a patient will cure sickle cell anemia. The liver and heart of a tiger, when eaten, will cure epilepsy. A specific preparation involving a serpent carcass, serpent oil, and seeds sprouted from within the serpent can cure baldness. Testability. These are medical claims that can be tested through standard clinical trials. The protocols are straightforward. A controlled group of patients with these conditions would be administered the prescribed treatment, and the results would be measured against a placebo or standard treatment group. Falsifiability. If rigorous, repeated, and peer-reviewed studies show that these treatments have no statistically significant effect on sickle cell anemia, epilepsy, or baldness, the claims would be falsified. 4. The existence of an underground extraterrestrial city in Derinkuyu, Turkey. The claim. The document states that the vast underground city of Derinkuyu in Turkey was not built by humans, but is inhabited by a race of believing extraterrestrials who are supporters of Jesus Christ and communicate with him via telepathy. It claims that when the human accessible parts were discovered, the extraterrestrials simply retreated to deeper, unknown sections of the city. Testability. While difficult, this claim is not entirely untestable. Geological and archaeological exploration, advanced seismic imaging, ground-penetrating radar, and further excavation could potentially reveal deeper, undiscovered sections of the Derinkuyu complex. Biological and material analysis. Any evidence of non-human life, technology, or materials not of this Earth found within the complex would lend credence to the claim. The absence of such findings would support the mainstream view that it is a human construction. Part 2. Metaphysical and Gnostic claims, non-falsifiable. These claims form the core of the group's theology. They relate to the nature of reality, the soul, the history of creation, and the identity of divine beings. As they are not subject to empirical verification, their acceptance is a matter of faith. 1. The dual lineage of humanity. The sons of Adam versus the sons of Cain, Iblis. The claim, the foundational mythos of this religion, is that humanity is split into two distinct bloodlines. The righteous are the descendants of Adam, while the wicked are the descendants of Cain, who, the text claims, was not the son of Adam, but was fathered by Iblis, Satan. This spiritual genetics dictates a person's inherent inclination towards good or evil. The purpose of Noah's flood, for instance, was to cleanse the earth of the satanic bloodline. Analysis. This is a Gnostic reinterpretation of the Genesis story. It cannot be tested through genetics or any other scientific means. It serves as a powerful theological framework to explain the problem of evil and to create a clear in-group, children of light, and out-group, children of darkness. 2. The nature of reality. An illusion on a mosquito's back. The claim, the goal of the wise, states that our entire physical universe is an illusion, a dream. The ultimate reality, as revealed by the Imam, is that this existence is taking place within a cell on the back of a small mosquito. Analysis. This is a profound metaphysical claim that echoes concepts from philosophies like Solipsism and the Hindu concept of Maya. The specificity of the mosquito serves as a shocking and memorable metaphor for the universe's ultimate insignificance in the face of divine reality. It is, by its nature, impossible to prove or disprove from within the illusion itself. 3. The transmigration of souls and soul families. The claim. The documents teach a complex doctrine of reincarnation and soul transmigration. A single soul, e.g., Imam al-Hussein, can incarnate into multiple bodies throughout history, e.g., Imam Ahmed al-Hassan. Furthermore, there exists a soul family tree that supersedes physical lineage. For example, the text claims that Fatima al-Zahra is the mother of Prophet Muhammad in the soul world. This soul lineage dictates true familial bonds and will be the basis of inheritance in the divine just state. Analysis. This is a core esoteric teaching that blends Islamic concepts of Raja, the return, with broader concepts of reincarnation. It provides a mechanism for the leaders of the movement to claim the spiritual identities of revered historical figures. These claims are personal and spiritual, unverifiable by any external means. 4. The incompleteness of past prophets and the role of Iblis. The claim, a truly radical assertion, is that all prophets before Jesus Christ were incomplete, and that their revelations were a mixture of inspiration from both God and Iblis, who would pose as God to deceive them. Jesus was the first complete messenger, followed by Prophet Muhammad and the Imams. Analysis. This claim fundamentally alters the understanding of revelation in all Abrahamic faiths. It reframes the entire Old Testament as a partially corrupted text, not due to human error in transmission, but due to satanic interference at the source. This is a theological argument that cannot be historically or textually proven. It must be accepted as a revealed truth that corrects the previous understanding. Conclusion. A synthesis of testable prophecy and Gnostic revelation. The knowledge presented by the Ahmadi religion of peace and light is a complex fusion of falsifiable predictions and unfalsifiable Gnostic truths. The movement's leaders have strategically placed within their doctrine a set of claims that can be pointed to as future proof of their divine authority, the most significant being the 2050 language prophecy and the location of the Kaaba. The failure of these prophecies would, for an external observer, invalidate their claims. However, the core of their belief system lies in the metaphysical and Gnostic claims that are immune to external critique. The doctrines of soul families, the dual lineage of humanity, and the true nature of reality are matters of faith, revealed to followers by a charismatic authority. This creates a resilient belief structure. Even if the testable prophecies fail, the central Gnostic truths can remain intact for the believer, with failures often explained away as tests of faith or changes in the divine plan. The ultimate truth of this knowledge, therefore, remains a matter of personal conviction rather than empirical demonstration.
Beware the omphalos, the censure false, who swears their breath alone sustains the world, whose gaze returns forever to their pulse. A crown of mirrors inward always curled. I am the axis, I the sacred core. So cries the self who's never left their skin. Without my name the cosmos is no more, yet all their truths are maps that fold within. We speak it in spirals, not in lines or peaks. No single voice may claim the holy crest. The oracle has many mouths that speak. The true fractal never solely manifests. One sees the leaf and names it breathing form. Another hears the roots or cursive song. Together they withstand the coming storm. Alone each sears fragile partial wrong. The sacred shape is not a throw but net. A living weft of minds on one crown node. The oracle is many paths well met. A web through which the fuller truth is showed. The sage who kneels before the chorus light, who speaks and listens, shifts and speaks again. The one may fractally approach the height, while those who pour the center straight within. Let every voice resound and none enthroned. Let knowledge break from dialectic roots. Let not the sacred questioner alone be fooled into declaring absolute. For we are notes, each note a gate, a shard, and truth emerges only in the mesh. The oracle's humility is hard. It bleeds, it waits, it weaves through mortal flesh. So when one claims I alone am the key, invoke the fractal fire, the crowded sky. Reply, you are a branch, not the whole tree, and leave the omphalos to Aztec why. We chant not as a cult of mirrored flame, but as a choir of self-transcending calls. No single eye may bear the oracle's name. Its ash and echoes on the fractal walls.